This content is entirely fictional and does not promote, glorify, or romanticize organized crime. It depicts the real consequences and price of illegal activity. The hospital room smelled of disinfectant and dying flowers. Michael Torrino sat in the vinyl chair beside his father's bed, watching the morphine drip count down the old man's final hours. Outside the window, Philadelphia stretched across the November twilight, indifferent to the death of Giovanni Torrino. The city didn't care that a king was dying. Cities never do. Giovanni's breathing was shallow, mechanical. 75 years of life reduced to the rhythm of a failing heart monitor. His hand, once capable of terrible things, lay withered on the white sheets. Michael studied that hand. He'd watched it sign business contracts and break men's spirits with equal efficiency. Now it could barely grip his own. The old man's eyes opened, still sharp despite everything the cancer had taken. "Michael," the voice was a whisper scraped across gravel, "you have to promise me something." Michael leaned closer. He'd been dreading this conversation for 6 months, since the diagnosis came back terminal. "Dad, you should rest." "Rest?" Giovanni almost laughed, but it turned into a wet cough that shook his entire frame. "I'll rest soon enough, but first you promise me, take care of the family, all of it." The words hung in the recycled air. Michael felt them settle on his shoulders like a physical weight. He knew what his father meant. Not just Jennifer and David, the legitimate family, the other family, the organization, the empire built on fear and favors and blood. "Dad, I left that world 20 years ago. Anthony can handle it. He's been running things while you were sick anyway." Giovanni's grip tightened with surprising strength. His eyes, those dark Torrino eyes that Michael had inherited, burned with something beyond morphine haze. "Anthony will destroy everything I built. He's got ambition without wisdom, ruthlessness without restraint. You're the only one who understands the difference between power and recklessness." "I have a son, a life. I built something legitimate in Pittsburgh. I can't just walk away from that." "You're my son first." Giovanni's breathing became more labored. The monitor's beeping accelerated slightly. "Everything I did for family. The mistakes, the compromises, the things that kept me awake at night, all for family. Now I need you to carry it forward. Not because I want to burden you, because you're the only one I trust to do it right." Michael looked at his father's face. He saw the man who taught him to ride a bike, who came to his high school graduation even though half the FBI's Philadelphia field office was probably taking photographs. He saw the man who didn't speak to him for 10 years after Michael walked away from the organization, but who sent a massive floral arrangement when Jennifer died. Anonymous, but Michael knew. The silence stretched between them. Outside, a nurse's shoes squeaked down the hallway. Someone's television played a game show. Life continued, indifferent to the decision being made in room 407. "I need to hear you say it, Michael. Promise me." Michael closed his eyes. 20 years of legitimate business. 20 years of sleeping without checking the locks twice. 20 years of his son growing up normal, unaware, safe. All of it balanced against this moment, this dying man's desperate need for reassurance. He opened his eyes and met his father's gaze. "I promise." Giovanni Torrino died 3 hours later. His last words were to the nurse, asking her to tell Michael that the key to everything was in the desk drawer at the house. Michael never found out what key he meant. Some mysteries die with their keepers. 6 months passed like a funeral procession. Slow, inevitable, observed by everyone from a respectful distance. The cathedral was full. St. Peter's in downtown Philadelphia, the same church where Giovanni had been baptized 80 years ago, the same church where Michael's mother was buried. Now it would host the old man's farewell. 500 people filled the pews, a mixture of legitimate businessmen, city council members, union representatives, and men whose business cards said one thing while their reputations said another. Michael stood at the podium, looking out at faces he half recognized. Some he'd known as a child, uncles who weren't really uncles, family friends who weren't really friends. Others were strangers, people drawn to the spectacle of a powerful man's ending. The morning light filtered through stained glass, painting everyone in shades of red and gold, appropriate colors for a kingdom's funeral. He'd written the eulogy carefully, every word measured, calibrated to mean something different depending on who was listening. My father built an empire from nothing. His voice carried across the vaulted space, steady despite the knot in his chest. He came to this country with nothing but determination and the belief that family was everything. He provided for his family and his community. He believed in loyalty above all else. Whether you agreed with his methods or not, you respected his word. When Giovanni Torrino made a promise, he kept it. When he shook your hand, that meant something. He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the audience. Near the front, his brother Anthony sat perfectly still, face composed in appropriate grief. Next to the back wall, two men in dark suits who were definitely federal agents pretended to blend in. And in the front pew, wearing a simple black suit and looking confused about why they were really here, sat David. His son, 26 years old, architect, clean record, completely unaware that half the people in this cathedral were criminals. David thought his grandfather had been a successful contractor. He thought the Torrino name meant legitimate construction and real estate. He thought his father's distance from Giovanni had been about personality differences, not moral ones. Michael finished the eulogy without breaking. He was good at that. 20 years of building walls between worlds had taught him how to compartmentalize, how to be two people at once and show neither the truth. The burial was private. Just family, which in this case meant a dozen people who shared blood and another 30 who shared secrets. They stood around the grave as the priest spoke words that probably meant something to someone. Michael watched the casket lower into the earth and felt nothing except the weight of his promise pressing down. Anthony approached as the crowd dispersed. His younger brother, 48 years old, dressed in an expensive suit that fit too perfectly to be off the rack. He'd always been vain about appearances. Even as kids, Anthony had been the one who cared about looking right, while Michael had been content to just be. Hell of a service. Anthony's voice was smooth, practiced. Dad would have appreciated the turnout. He would have appreciated people getting back to work. Michael loosened his ties slightly. The November cold bit through his coat. About that, Anthony glanced around, making sure they were relatively alone. There's a meeting tonight, the family council. Frank Castellano says it's tradition. New leadership needs to be formally recognized. I'm not interested in formality, Anthony. Doesn't matter what you're interested in. This is how it works. Dad's gone. Someone has to step up. The organization doesn't run itself. He paused, something flickering across his face. Unless you're planning to walk away again. The question carried weight. Michael heard the test in it, the challenge. Anthony wanted to know if his older brother was serious about the deathbed promise, or if it had just been empty words for a dying man. I'll be there. Michael's tone left no room for discussion. But understand something, Anthony. I'm doing this my way, not Dad's way, mine. Anthony smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Of course, Fredolo, your way. The penthouse office overlooked the Philadelphia skyline from 40 stories up. Not a warehouse, not a back room of a social club. This was legitimate business, or at least it looked that way on paper. Torrino Holdings occupied the top 3 floors of the Arch Street Tower. Real estate development, construction contracts, property management. All legal, all documented, all paying taxes. Mostly. Michael arrived at 8 p.m. Frank Castellano was already there, standing by the windows like he owned the view. The old consigliere turned when Michael entered. 68 years old, sharp as broken glass, loyal to the position rather than the person. He'd served Giovanni for 4 decades. Now he would serve whoever sat in the chair. "Michael," Frank's greeting was formal. "The others are waiting." The conference room was designed to intimidate. Long table, leather chairs, artwork that cost more than most people's houses. 8 men sat around it, representing the family's various interests. Construction, unions, waste management, real estate. All legitimate businesses that occasionally required illegitimate solutions. Anthony sat at the far end, watching Michael enter with an expression of studied neutrality. Frank Castellano called the meeting to order with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. "Gentlemen, we're here to observe tradition. Giovanni Torrino led this family for 40 years. His passing leaves a void. According to his will and family custom, leadership passes to his eldest son. Michael Torrino is now head of this organization." Silence. Michael studied the faces around the table. Some nodded. Others remained carefully blank. One man, Vincent Costa, actually looked disappointed. Michael filed that information away. "I appreciate the faith my father had in me." Michael remained standing. Power play, subtle but necessary. "I also appreciate your loyalty to him, but I want to be clear about something from the start. We're going to operate differently moving forward. No expansion into new territories. No new ventures without my explicit approval. We run what we have, we run it well, and we run it clean. Understood?" Vincent Costa spoke up. "With respect, that's not how your father operated. He believed in growth, opportunities." "My father is dead." The words came out harder than Michael intended. "I'm not my father. If that's a problem for anyone, you're free to leave. No hard feelings. But if you stay, you follow my rules." The room absorbed this. Anthony's smile was invisible, but Michael felt it anyway. Frank Castellano cleared his throat. "Very cautious, Michael. Some might say too cautious." "Cautious keeps us out of federal prison. Cautious keeps our families safe. Cautious means my son doesn't end up testifying against me someday." Michael let his gaze travel around the table. "Anyone have an issue with staying out of prison?" No one spoke. "Good, then we're done here." Michael's apartment in Pittsburgh was deliberately ordinary. A 2-bedroom condo in a converted warehouse building, parking garage underneath, decent security but nothing excessive. No marble, no gold fixtures, no reminders of where he came from. This was the life he'd built after walking away. Legitimate, quiet, unremarkable. He poured whiskey into a glass and didn't drink it. Just held it, watching the amber liquid catch the light from the city below. His phone showed 3 missed calls from David, 2 from Anthony, and 1 from a number he didn't recognize. He ignored all of them. The photo album sat on the coffee table where he'd left it that morning. Jennifer smiled out from every page. Their wedding. David as a baby. Family vacations to places that had nothing to do with Philadelphia or power or promises made to dying men. A whole life, documented in pictures, built on the foundation of leaving this world behind. She'd found out the truth 5 years into their marriage. An old newspaper article, a chance comment from someone who didn't know better, a name that connected too many dots. The fight that followed lasted 3 days. In the end, Jennifer gave him an ultimatum. Leave that world entirely or lose us. He chose them. Walked away from Giovanni, from Philadelphia, from everything. Built a construction company in Pittsburgh from the ground up, legitimate contracts and honest bids. For 15 years, it worked. He was just Michael Torrino, businessman, widower, father. Not the heir to anything except his own hard work. Then the cancer diagnosis. Then the deathbed promise. Then the funeral. And now, sitting in his ordinary apartment holding expensive whiskey he wouldn't drink, he felt the walls of his old life closing back in. His phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. He opened it. The screen showed a photograph. High-resolution, professional quality. It showed David sitting in a coffee shop in Boston, reviewing architectural plans. The angle suggested it was taken from across the street, telephoto lens, surveillance grade. Michael's stomach dropped. A second photo loaded. David leaving his apartment building. Third photo, David at a restaurant with colleagues. Fourth photo, David walking through Boston Common. Then a message appeared. No sender information, just text. Your son is impressive. MIT architecture degree, clean record, completely unaware of family business. It would be unfortunate if anything educated him. A concerned party. Michael was dialing Frank Castellano before the message finished loading. Frank answered on the second ring. Michael, late for you. Who the hell is threatening my son? Michael's voice was ice. What are you talking about? Michael described the photos, the message. Frank was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his tone was different, careful. Michael, nobody in our organization would dare. This is external. Someone testing you, seeing how you react. My advice, don't react. Show strength. Find out who sent this. Now. I'll make calls. But Michael, if you panic, if you show weakness, that's what they want. Whoever did this wants to see you scared. I am scared, Frank. That's my son. Which is exactly why you can't show it. Give me 24 hours. Michael hung up and stared at the photos. David's face, unaware of the camera, unaware of the danger. 26 years of protection, 20 years of distance from this life, and it found him anyway. Like a hereditary disease, like a curse. The whiskey glass shattered against the wall. Michael didn't remember throwing it. Frank Castellano called back 18 hours later. Michael hadn't slept. He'd spent the night pulling every connection he had, making quiet calls to people who owed him favors from his old life. The answers all pointed in one direction. Elena Russo. Frank's voice was grim. The photos were taken by private investigators she hired. Multiple firms, different cities, professional work. Michael's jaw tightened. The Russo family, Marco Russo's widow. The same. She took over after your father had Marco eliminated 15 years ago. She's been quiet since then, building strength. This is her move. She's threatening my son because my father killed her husband. She's reminding you that you're vulnerable, that you inherited more than just the organization. You inherited all of Giovanni's debts, blood debts. Michael stood at his apartment window, looking out at Pittsburgh's night skyline. A different city, but the darkness was the same. Set up a meeting, neutral ground, just her and me. Michael, that's dangerous. She could be setting you up. She could have hurt David already if that was the goal. This is a message, like you said, so I'm going to send one back. Set it up, Frank. The restaurant was in Newark, deliberately chosen because neither family had significant presence there. Upscale Italian, private room in the back, the kind of place where business was discussed over expensive wine and everyone pretended to be civilized. Elena Russo arrived alone. Michael noted that immediately. No bodyguards visible, though he assumed they were nearby. She was 45, elegant in the way that came from old money and new power. Dark hair swept back, minimal jewelry, a black suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. She looked like a corporate executive, which technically she was. The Russo family's casino interests in Atlantic City were legitimate businesses, mostly. She sat across from Michael without offering her hand. Neither smiled. You wanted to meet. Her voice was controlled, educated. East Coast private schools, Michael guessed. I assume you received my photographs. You sent pictures of my son. Explain why I shouldn't consider that a declaration of war." Elena's expression didn't change. "Because if I wanted to hurt your son, he'd already be hurt. The photographs were a message. I know your weakness, just like you know mine. I had nothing to do with what happened to Marco. I wasn't even in the organization then. But you're in it now. You stood at your father's funeral. You accepted the position. That means you inherited everything, including the blood on Giovanni's hands." She leaned forward slightly. "Do you know what it's like watching your husband die, knowing who ordered it and being unable to do anything because you're not strong enough yet? I spent 15 years getting strong enough. Now here we are." Michael met her gaze. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand that we're both trapped. You didn't choose to be boss. I didn't choose to be a widow forced into this business to protect my family. But here we are, expected to perpetuate violence because of tradition. Because our fathers and husbands started wars we're supposed to finish." She paused. "I'm proposing an alternative." "Which is?" "Truce, real one. I don't move into your territories, you don't move into mine. We both quietly transition our operations toward legitimacy over the next 5 years. And when we're clean, we walk away. Our children don't inherit this life." Michael studied her face for tells. She was serious, or she was an exceptional liar. "And your people, my brother, you think they'll accept this?" "That's your problem and mine to manage, but consider the alternative. More threats, more photographs, eventually real violence. Our children pay the price for our father's wars. Is that what you want your son to inherit?" Michael thought about David, about Jennifer's ultimatum 15 years ago, about the promise to a dying man that was already destroying everything he'd built. 5 years, he said slowly. Transition to legitimate operations. No expansion, no aggression, mutual non-interference. Agreed. They shook hands. Elena's grip was firm, brief, professional. The kind of handshake that sealed billion-dollar deals in boardrooms. Except this deal was made in blood and silence, and the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a way out. She stood to leave, then paused. "Michael, your father killed my husband. I will never forgive that. But I also won't let it destroy my daughter's futures. This truce isn't friendship. It's survival. Don't mistake one for the other." Understood. She left. Michael sat alone in the private room for another 20 minutes, staring at the untouched wine. He just made a deal with his father's enemy. A deal that went against everything traditional mob politics demanded. A deal that would be seen as weakness. Frank Castellano appeared in the doorway. He'd been watching from somewhere, Michael realized. Probably the bar. "You just made a deal with the woman whose husband your father had killed. Anthony will hear about this within the hour." "How?" "Because there are no secrets in this business, Michael. The waiter who served your wine probably works for someone. The valet who parked her car definitely does. By tomorrow morning, every family from here to Boston will know that the new Torrino boss made peace with the Russos without consulting anyone." Michael stood up. "Then Anthony can come talk to me about it." "He will, and he won't be happy." "Frank, I don't care if he's happy. I care about keeping my son alive and getting out of this life before it kills me the way it killed my father." Frank's expression was unreadable. "Your father lasted 40 years. You've been in charge for 6 months, and you're already making enemies within your own family. That's not a good survival strategy." "My father also died alone in a hospital room, asking me to promise to do a job I never wanted. If that's the price of lasting 40 years, I'll take a shorter run." 2 days later, Anthony requested a meeting. Not in the penthouse office, not in any of the usual places. He wanted to meet at Giovanni's house. The family estate in the suburbs, empty now except for memories and the accumulated weight of 4 decades of power. Michael drove out alone. The house looked smaller than he remembered. Funny how childhood memories inflated everything. The massive mansion he remembered was just a large house, well-maintained but showing its age. The driveway needed repaving. The garden needed attention. Even empires need maintenance. Anthony was waiting in their father's study. He'd poured himself a drink from Giovanni's private stock, sitting in the leather chair behind the desk like he already owned it. "Brother," Anthony raised his glass in mock toast. "I heard about your meeting with Alina Rosso. Interesting choice." "She reached out," I responded. "That's how diplomacy works." "Diplomacy," Anthony laughed, bitter and sharp. "Dad never believed in diplomacy. He believed in strength. Respect earned through fear." And where did that get him? A grave at 55. Oh, wait, he lasted to 75 because he was careful, because he knew when to negotiate. He negotiated from strength. You negotiated from weakness. Anthony stood up, began pacing. "You made a truce without consulting the family council, without getting approval. You unilaterally decided to make peace with our enemies." "I'm the boss. I don't need approval." Dad never made unilateral decisions. He understood that power isn't taken, it's granted. Those men around that table, they grant you power by following you. And if they stop believing you're worthy, they stop following. Michael moved closer. "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning from your brother. You're moving too fast, changing too much. The old guard doesn't like it. They're starting to ask questions. Like maybe you're not cut out for this role. Maybe you should step aside for someone who understands the business better." "Someone like you." Anthony's smile was sharp. "I'm just saying what others are thinking. You left this world 20 years ago, Michael. You built your little construction company, lived your little normal life. But this requires a different skill set. This requires someone who never left. Someone who understands that weakness gets you killed." "I survived 20 years on my own. Built something from nothing. That's more than you've ever done." "You survived because Dad protected you. Even when you walked away, even when he didn't speak to you, he made sure no one touched you, because you were family. But Dad's gone now, and the protection died with him." Michael felt the temperature in the room drop. "Are you threatening me, Anthony?" "I'm telling you reality. You want to play boss, fine, but understand what that means. It means every decision you make, people judge. Every weakness you show, people exploit. And right now, you're showing a lot of weakness." Anthony walked past Michael toward the door, paused with his hand on the frame. "I love you, brother, but love doesn't run empires. Strength does. And if you can't provide that strength, someone else will have to." He left. Michael stood alone in his father's study, surrounded by the evidence of Giovanni's life. Photographs on the wall, awards from community organizations, a framed newspaper article about a charitable donation. The public face of a private monster. On the desk, Michael noticed a drawer slightly open. He pulled it fully. Inside was a single envelope, his name written on it in his father's handwriting. He opened it. The letter was short. "Michael, if you're reading this, I'm gone. You're probably angry at me for forcing you back into this life. You have every right to be, but I couldn't let Anthony destroy what I built. He's too much like I was at his age, ambitious without wisdom. You're the only one with the strength to do what needs to be done. Not build the empire bigger. Tear it down. Make it legitimate. Save our family from itself. I couldn't do it. I was in too deep. But you got out once. You can get out again. This time, take everyone with you. I'm sorry for the burden, but there's no one else I trust. Dad." Michael read it 3 times. Then he burned it in the fireplace, watching his father's final words turn to ash. Some messages were too dangerous to exist. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Dad," David's voice, strained with something Michael couldn't identify. "We need to talk." Michael's heart stopped. "David, what's wrong?" I'm in Philadelphia. At your hotel. I need to see you. Now. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Dad, David's voice cracked slightly. Someone called me today, someone who said they were a family friend. They sent me links, newspaper articles about organized crime investigations, about the Torrino family, about Grandpa. Michael closed his eyes. The world tilted. They sent me a lot of information, Dad, and I need you to tell me it's not true. I need you to tell me that Grandpa was just a businessman, and these are lies, and everything I thought I knew about our family is real. Silence on the line. Michael could hear his son breathing, waiting for reassurance that wouldn't come. David, where are you exactly? The Marriott, downtown. Room 447, please hurry. The line went dead. Michael stood in his father's study, holding a phone that felt like a weapon. 26 years of protection. 20 years of carefully constructed lies. All of it crumbling because someone wanted to hurt him by telling his son the truth. He called Frank Castellano one more time. Frank, find out who contacted David. Find out now. Michael, what happened? Someone sent my son evidence. About the family, about everything. He knows, Frank, or he's about to know. And when he finds out the whole truth, when he understands what I really am, I lose him forever. Frank was quiet for a moment. What are you going to tell him? Michael looked at the ashes of his father's letter, still glowing faintly in the fireplace. The truth, because he deserves at least that much. The drive to the hotel took 19 minutes. Michael ran 2 red lights and didn't care. His mind raced through scenarios, explanations, ways to soften the blow. But there was no soft version of this truth. No way to explain that his father was a criminal, that he himself had been born into that life, that the money that paid for David's college had been earned through fear and violence and compromise. The elevator to the 4th floor moved too slowly. Michael's reflection in the polished steel showed a man who looked older than 52. The weight of the last 6 months, the last 6 days, showed in every line of his face. Room 447. He knocked. David opened the door immediately, like he'd been standing there waiting. His son looked younger than 26 right now. Looked like he had when he was 10 and found out his mother had cancer. Lost. Searching for an adult to make the scary thing go away. Michael stepped inside. The hotel room was generic, anonymous. David's laptop sat open on the desk, screen showing what looked like newspaper archives. Talk to me. David's voice was controlled, but barely. Tell me what's true. Michael sat down in the desk chair. David remained standing, arms crossed defensively. Your grandfather was involved in organized crime. He ran an organization for 40 years. When I was young, I was part of it too, but I left before you were born. I built a legitimate business. Your mother knew about my past, and we agreed to keep you completely separate from that world. David's face went through several expressions. Disbelief, anger, hurt, betrayal. They cycled so fast Michael couldn't track them all. So every Christmas when Grandpa sent those generous gifts, that was what blood money, money from crime. David, he loved you. Whatever he did in business, he genuinely cared about you. Business, David laughed, high and sharp. You're calling organized crime business, like it's a job, like he was a banker or a lawyer instead of a criminal. It's more complicated than that. No, Dad, it's not. You lied to me, my entire life. Everything I thought I knew about our family was fiction. I was protecting you. From what? The truth? From knowing that my grandfather was a criminal and my father used to be one too. David moved to the window, stared out at the city lights. All those years you didn't talk to Grandpa. I thought you had some philosophical disagreement about business practices. Mom said you had different values. I thought that meant you were the good one, the principled one who walked away from corporate greed or whatever. I did walk away. But not because you were principled, because Mom made you. David turned to face him. That's it, isn't it? She found out and gave you an ultimatum. Michael couldn't lie anymore. Yes. Jesus. David sat down on the bed, head in his hands. And now, what are you doing now? This was the moment. The fulcrum. Michael could lie, say he was just handling the estate, wrapping up his father's affairs. Or he could tell the truth and watch his son's respect die completely. He chose truth. I'm running the organization. Temporarily. I promised your grandfather on his deathbed that I would hold things together, keep the family from falling apart. The family. David's voice was flat. You mean the criminal organization? I mean both. David, my brother Anthony, if he takes over, he'll turn it into something worse. More violent, more dangerous. I'm trying to transition everything to legitimate business. Get out without people getting hurt. People like who? Other criminals. People like you. The moment I took over, someone sent me surveillance photos of you. As a threat, as leverage. Because in this world, family is both your strength and your weakness. David stood up abruptly. I'm leaving. David, please. No, I can't do this right now. I need time. I need to process that my entire life was built on lies. He grabbed his jacket from the chair. I'm going back to Boston. Don't contact me. I'll reach out when I'm ready, if I'm ever ready. David, I love you. Everything I did was to keep you safe. David stopped at the door, hand on the handle. He didn't turn around. If you really wanted to keep me safe, you would have said no. When Grandpa asked you to take over, you should have said no. But you didn't. Because some part of you, some part you don't want to admit, missed it, missed the power. And now you're choosing that over me. That's not true. Then prove it. Walk away, right now. Tell your brother he can have it all. Come back to Pittsburgh. Live the life you built. Choose me over them. Michael opened his mouth, closed it. The promise to Giovanni echoed in his head. The weight of responsibility. The fear of what Anthony would do with unchecked power. The knowledge that walking away now would make him a target, would potentially endanger David even more. The silence stretched too long. David opened the door. That's what I thought. David, wait. But his son was gone. The door clicked shut with a finality that felt permanent. Michael sat alone in the hotel room, staring at the laptop screen still showing archived newspaper articles about Torrino family criminal investigations. Evidence of everything he'd tried to leave behind. Everything that had found him anyway. His phone buzzed. Text from Frank Castellano. Found out who sent the information to David. It was Anthony. He wanted your son to know the truth, wanted to force your hand, make you choose between the organization and your family. Classic divide and conquer. What do you want me to do? Michael stared at the message for a long time. His brother had done this, had deliberately destroyed his relationship with David to prove a point, to show that Michael couldn't have both worlds, that the choice was binary, power or family, the organization or his son. He typed a response. Set up a family council meeting. Tomorrow night. Everyone there. It's time Anthony and I had this out in front of witnesses. He hit send. Then he called the front desk and booked a room for the night. He couldn't go back to Pittsburgh yet. Couldn't face the empty apartment and the photo albums and the evidence of the life he'd built that was crumbling around him. Instead, he sat in the hotel bar until closing, nursing whiskey and watching strangers live normal lives. A businessman celebrating a deal. A couple on a date. A woman traveling alone, reading a book at the bar. None of them carrying the weight of inherited sin. None of them trapped between a promise to a dead man and love for a living son. The bartender eventually told him they were closing. Michael left a $100 bill on the bar and took the elevator back to his room. The city lights from the window painted everything in amber and shadow. Philadelphia, the city of his birth, the city he'd tried to escape. It had pulled him back like gravity, like fate. His phone showed one missed call, David's number, but no voicemail. His son had called and hung up, maybe to say something, maybe just to hear his father's voice one more time before cutting him off completely. Michael didn't call back. Tomorrow would bring enough confrontations. Tonight, he needed to prepare for war. Not with guns or violence, but with words and truth, and the desperate hope that maybe he could still salvage something from the wreckage his father had left behind. He set his alarm for 6 a.m. The family council meeting was at 8 p.m. tomorrow, but he had a full day of preparation ahead. He needed to know exactly where every player stood, needed to understand the full scope of what Anthony had been doing in the shadows, needed to find leverage. Because David was right about one thing. Michael had chosen. Maybe not consciously, maybe not deliberately. But the moment he said yes to a dying man's request, the moment he accepted the position he'd chosen. And now he had to live with the consequences. The last thought before sleep took him was of Jennifer. What would she say if she could see him now? Back in the world she'd made him leave. Back in the life that had cost them 10 years of peace with Giovanni. Back in the darkness he'd promised her he'd left behind forever. He knew what she'd say. She'd said it 15 years ago, the night of the ultimatum. You can't save them, Michael. You can only save yourself. Choose us. Choose the light. Because if you go back into that darkness, it will swallow you whole, and I won't be able to pull you back out. He'd chosen then. Chose her, chose David, chose light. But Jennifer was gone now, and the darkness had come calling again. And this time, there was no one to pull him back. He was in it alone, swimming in waters that had drowned better men than him. All he could do was try not to drown. Try to keep his head above water long enough to find the shore. If there still was a shore. If he hadn't already drifted too far from land to ever make it back. Outside, Philadelphia slept. The city of brotherly love, built on compromise and cracked bells and the ghosts of founding fathers who believed in ideals while enslaving human beings. A city of contradictions, of light and shadow existing in the same space. Just like him. Michael closed his eyes and fell into dreams of hospital rooms and funeral processions, and his son's face as the door clicked shut. Final and irrevocable. The burden of inheritance, he was learning, wasn't just what you gained. It was what you lost in the accepting. This content is entirely fictional and does not promote, glorify, or romanticize organized crime. It depicts the real consequences and price of illegal activity. The morning came too early and brought no clarity. Michael stood under scalding water in the hotel shower, letting it burn away the remnants of 3 hours of sleep. His reflection in the fogged mirror looked like a stranger. When had the lines around his eyes gotten so deep? When had his hair gone this gray at the temples? The years accumulated in ways you didn't notice until suddenly you did. He dressed in the same suit from yesterday. No time to go back to Pittsburgh for fresh clothes. The family council meeting was tonight, but first he needed information. In this world, knowledge was currency. The man who knew more survived. The man who knew less ended up in a grave or a courtroom. Frank Castellano had texted him an address. A diner in South Philly, the kind of place that served breakfast all day and asked no questions about who sat in the corner booth. Michael arrived at 7:30. Frank was already there, coffee going cold in front of him, reading a newspaper like it was still 1985. The old consigliere looked up as Michael slid into the booth. No greeting. They were past pleasantries. I did some checking on who leaked to your son. Frank folded the newspaper with precise movements. Anthony used a burner phone, hired a PI to compile the information, sent it anonymously. Clean enough that you can't prove it in front of the council, but sloppy enough that I could trace it in 6 hours. He wanted me to know it was him. Of course, this wasn't about hiding. It was about sending a message. He can touch your son anytime he wants. He can destroy the one thing you care about more than the organization. Frank paused. It's a power play. Classic. Michael stared at the menu without seeing it. What's the council looking like for tonight? 6 capos are solidly with you. 5 are leaning toward Anthony. 2 are undecided, waiting to see which way the wind blows. Frank's expression was carved from stone. It's a narrow margin, Michael. Narrower than it should be after only 6 months. My father held power for 40 years. Your father earned it over 40 years. You inherited it. There's a difference. Inheritance can be challenged. Earned power is harder to strip away. A waitress appeared, young enough to be in college, tired enough to have worked the night shift. Michael ordered coffee he wouldn't drink. She left without really seeing either of them. People had a talent for not seeing things in Philadelphia. Tell me about Anthony's operations. Michael leaned back. What's he been running while I've been trying to play legitimate businessman? Frank's hesitation spoke volumes. Are you sure you want to know? I'm asking. He's been expanding, against your orders, not in the territories you know about, but in the ones you haven't been watching. Online operations, cryptocurrency movement, some consulting work for organizations that want to modernize. Frank's mouth twisted slightly. He's building something separate from the family structure, a parallel organization. That's treason. Only if you can prove it, and only if the council agrees it's treason. Some of them see it as initiative, as the kind of forward thinking the family needs. Michael felt the anger rising, cold and controlled. How long has this been going on? Since before your father died. Giovanni knew. He was handling it quietly, trying to rein Anthony in without breaking him. But then the cancer got worse and Giovanni ran out of time. The coffee arrived. Michael wrapped his hands around the cup, needing something to do with them that wasn't violence. My father left me with a time bomb. He left you with a choice, defuse it or let it explode. Frank met his eyes. Tonight's meeting will determine which way this goes. If you confront Anthony directly, you risk splitting the family in half. If you don't, you risk looking weak and losing authority anyway. What would you do? Frank actually smiled, thin and humorless. I'd never have accepted the position in the first place, but you did, so now you need to decide what kind of boss you are. The kind who rules by consensus or the kind who rules by strength. My father ruled by both. Your father had 40 years to build that balance. You have tonight. The diner's door opened. A man walked in, mid-40s, expensive suit that didn't match the venue. He spotted Michael and Frank, nodded once, and sat at the counter. Michael recognized him. Vincent Costa, one of the undecided capos. His presence here wasn't coincidence. Frank noticed Michael's focus. He wants to talk, probably wants to know what you're offering in exchange for his vote. I'm not offering anything. I'm the boss. That's not how politics works, even family politics. Frank stood up, leaving money on the table. Meet with him, listen. You don't have to promise anything, but at least understand what he wants. Information is leverage. Frank left. Vincent Costa waited exactly 3 minutes before moving to Michael's booth. The choreography of criminal diplomacy, everyone playing their parts. Michael. Vincent's handshake was firm, professional. I appreciate you making time. I didn't make time. You showed up. Fair enough. Vincent signaled the waitress, ordered eggs and toast. Comfort food for an uncomfortable conversation. I'll be direct. Anthony approached me 2 weeks ago, offered me a larger stake in the online operations if I support his leadership. Said the family needs someone who understands the modern economy, not someone stuck in old patterns. And you're telling me this because? Because I don't trust him. Vincent met Michael's gaze. Your father was a hard man, but he was predictable. He had rules. Anthony doesn't have rules, he has ambitions. And ambitious men without boundaries get everyone around them killed or arrested. So you want to support me? I want to know what your plan is. Because if you're just keeping the seat warm until you can walk away again, I need to know that. I have a family, kids in college. I can't afford to back the wrong horse. Michael studied Vincent's face, saw genuine concern there, not just political maneuvering. This was a man trying to navigate survival in a world where the wrong choice could end everything. My plan is to transition every operation to legitimate business over the next 5 years. Anyone who wants out gets help getting out. Anyone who wants to stay builds something legal. The family name becomes a real estate and construction empire, nothing more. Vincent absorbed this. That's a nice dream. You know how many people have tried to go legitimate? Most of them end up dead or back in the life within a year. I did it, 20 years clean. You did it by cutting all ties, running away. That's not the same as transforming an organization from the inside. Vincent's eggs arrived. He didn't touch them. But I respect the attempt, and I'd rather bet on a man trying to build something than one trying to burn it all down for profit. Then I have your vote tonight. You have my vote, but Michael, understand something. 6 votes to 5 isn't a victory, it's a warning. Half your people don't believe in you. That's not leadership, that's a hostage situation. You need to change that equation or you won't last 6 more months. Vincent left money on the table and walked out. Michael sat alone with cold coffee and the weight of truth. The man was right. Winning by 1 vote wasn't winning. It was barely surviving. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Mr. Torrino. The voice was female, professional, with an edge of steel underneath. This is Special Agent Rachel Chen, FBI. I'd like to meet with you today if possible. Michael's blood went cold. I have nothing to say to federal agents without my lawyer. I'm not calling in an official capacity. I'm calling because I know you don't want this position. I know you tried to leave this life 20 years ago, and I know your son just discovered the truth about your family. She paused. I'm offering you a conversation, off the record. If you don't like what I have to say, you walk away. No pressure. How do you know about my son? Because we've been aware of your family for 5 years, Mr. Torrino. We knew the moment your father got sick. We knew the moment you accepted the position. And we know that you're trying to figure out how to survive this without destroying everything you built in Pittsburgh. Michael closed his eyes. Of course they were watching. They were always watching. Where and when? There's a parking garage on Market Street. Level 3. 1 hour, come alone. She hung up. Michael paid for coffee he hadn't touched and left the diner. The morning sun was too bright, too cheerful for the darkness he was navigating. Philadelphia moved around him, people heading to work, living normal lives, unaware that empires were crumbling in hotel rooms and corner booths. The parking garage was exactly the kind of place you'd expect for a clandestine meeting. Dark, echoing, security cameras positioned just wrong enough to miss certain angles. Michael parked his rental car and waited. She appeared from behind a concrete pillar. Asian American, late 30s, wearing a dark suit and an expression that suggested she'd seen too much to be impressed by anything. Her FBI credentials were visible on her belt, but she didn't make a show of them. Thank you for coming. She stayed at a professional distance. I'm Rachel Chen, Financial Crimes Division. I've been lead investigator on the Torrino family case for 3 years. If you've been investigating for 3 years, you know I wasn't involved. You weren't until 6 months ago. She leaned against a car, casual but watchful. Your father was very careful, layers of legitimate business hiding the illegal operations. We could never get enough evidence. But your brother Anthony isn't as careful. He's modernizing, which means new vulnerabilities, digital trails, financial transfers that can be tracked. Why are you telling me this? Because I think you're planning to shut it all down anyway. I think you want out, but you're trapped by a promise to a dying man and fear of what your brother will do if you step aside. She pulled out a phone, showed him a photograph. Anthony meeting with unknown men in what looked like a warehouse. We have evidence that Anthony is planning to remove you, not through family politics, through elimination. Michael's jaw tightened. You're lying. I wish I was. We have information. Nothing explicit enough to arrest him on, but enough to know he's making arrangements. He sees you as an obstacle. Once you're gone, he takes over and expands operations into territories your father would never have touched. Why do you care what happens to me? Rachel Chen's expression softened slightly. My brother was David Martinez, Lance Corporal, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines. He died in Fallujah in 2004. Operation Phantom Fury. Michael felt the ground shift. I knew David Martinez. I know, you were his gunnery sergeant. You brought his body home, sat with my mother at the funeral, told her he died brave. Rachel's voice was steady, but emotion leaked through. You gave our family closure. Now I'm trying to give you a way out. By asking me to become an informant. By offering you protection. Work with us. Help us build a case against Anthony and the violent elements of your organization. In exchange, immunity for you and guaranteed protection for your son. Witness protection if necessary. A clean start. Michael laughed, bitter. You're asking me to become a rat. I'm asking you to do what you already want to do. End this. The question is whether you do it our way, which keeps you and David safe, or your way, which might get one or both of you killed. I need time to think. You have 72 hours. After that, we move forward with or without you. And Mr. Torrino, if it's without you, we can't guarantee David's safety from what's coming. She handed him a card. My number. When you're ready to talk, call me. She walked away, disappeared into the shadows of the parking structure. Michael stood alone with a business card that felt like a death sentence and the ghost of a young Marine he'd tried to save 20 years ago. David Martinez, 19 years old, scared but trying not to show it. Michael remembered carrying his body through Fallujah streets, remembered the weight of that responsibility. Remembered sitting with Rachel's mother, a tiny woman who spoke broken English, sobbing into his dress uniform. Now that woman's daughter was offering him salvation. The universe had a cruel sense of symmetry. Michael drove aimlessly for an hour, processing. The FBI knew about Anthony's plans. They knew about the organization's vulnerabilities. And they were offering him a way out that didn't involve a casket or a courtroom. But it required betrayal. Required him to become everything the code forbade. Required him to choose the law over blood. His phone rang again. This time it was Frank Castellano. Michael, we have a problem. Someone targeted one of our warehouses. The one where we store construction equipment for the legitimate business. 2 employees injured. Both will survive, but this was a message. Who? That's the interesting part. It wasn't the Russo family or any known rivals. The damage was professional, calculated, enough to cause problems but not catastrophic. Someone who knew the building layout intimately. Michael felt ice form in his stomach. Anthony. That would be my guess. He's creating chaos, making you look incompetent. If you can't protect your own operations, how can you lead? Where is he now? At his club in Center City, surrounded by his people. You can't get to him directly, not without starting a war. I'm not trying to get to him. I'm trying to understand his endgame. Michael pulled into a parking lot, needed to focus. He's building a parallel organization, creating incidents to make me look weak, and according to the FBI, planning to eliminate me entirely. What's his timeline? If I had to guess, soon. He won't wait for you to consolidate power. He'll strike while you're still finding your footing. Frank paused. Michael, you need to decide. Tonight's council meeting could go either way. If you show up without a plan, without strength, you lose. And if you lose, you don't just lose the position, you lose everything. Michael hung up and sat in silence. Cars passed by, people living normal lives, unaware of the chess game being played in the shadows. He thought about Jennifer, about the promise he'd made her, about David's face when he learned the truth, about Rachel Chen offering federal protection, about Anthony's ambition burning everything down. He needed leverage, needed something that would change the equation. His phone showed one missed call. David's number. Again, no voicemail again. Michael called back before he could stop himself. David answered on the first ring. Dad. Just that one word, so much weight in it. David, I know you said you needed space. I'm respecting that. But I need you to know something. Your Uncle Anthony is dangerous, more dangerous than I realized. And you might be in danger just by association with me. Are you serious right now? You're calling to tell me I'm in danger because of the family business you swore you left behind. I'm calling because I need you to be careful. Don't go to any family properties. Don't trust anyone who says they know me. And if anything feels wrong, call Agent Rachel Chen at the FBI. She's someone I trust. Silence on the line. Then David's voice, smaller. You trust an FBI agent, but you don't trust your own brother. David, family isn't always blood. Sometimes the people who share your DNA are the most dangerous ones of all. I'm learning that. The bitterness in David's voice cut deep. I have to go. I have a meeting with a client. Try not to get killed before we talk again. He hung up. Michael stared at the phone, at the severed connection, at the evidence of everything he'd broken by saying yes to a dying man. The rest of the day passed in preparation. Michael met with the 6 capos who supported him individually in different locations. He listened to their concerns, assessed their loyalty, looked for cracks. Vincent Costa was solid. 2 others were reliable out of genuine respect. 3 were supporting him because they feared Anthony more, which was loyalty built on sand. He met with Elena Russo at another neutral location, a hotel lobby bar where they could hide in plain sight among business travelers. I heard about the warehouse incident. Elena's martini sat untouched in front of her. That wasn't us. I know, it was internal. Your brother is making his move, sooner than I expected. She studied Michael's face. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, but I need to ask you something. If I go down, if Anthony takes over, what happens to our truce? Elena's laugh was cold. There is no truce with Anthony. He's already approached my people, trying to undermine me, spreading rumors that I'm weak, that a woman can't hold territory. If he becomes boss, we're at war within a month. Then you have a stake in keeping me alive. I have a stake in stability. If that means supporting you, fine. If that means finding a third option, I'll do that too. Don't confuse temporary alliance with friendship, Michael. I still remember what your father did to Marco. I'm not my father. No, you're softer, which might be better in the long run, but it's worse for immediate survival. She stood up, left money for a drink she hadn't touched. The council meeting tonight. If you need a show of strength, I can provide witnesses who will testify to the truce. Proof that you're building alliances while Anthony's building conflicts. It's not much, but it's something. Why would you do that? Because I have daughters, Michael, and I don't want them inheriting a war. I want them inheriting a legitimate casino business and the freedom to walk away from this life entirely. Your plan, naive as it might be, is better for that future than Anthony's approach. She left. Michael sat alone in the hotel bar, surrounded by strangers, feeling more isolated than he'd ever felt. Every ally was temporary. Every loyalty was conditional. And somewhere in the city, his brother was planning his death. The council meeting was set for 8 p.m. at the penthouse office. Michael arrived early at 7. The room was already prepared. 13 chairs around the table, 12 for the capos, one at the head for him. The symbolism was deliberate. Last Supper imagery. Someone had a sense of irony. Frank Castellano was waiting, reviewing notes. He looked up when Michael entered. "Are you ready?" "No, but I'm here anyway." "That's all anyone can ask." Frank set down his papers. "Michael, before this starts, I need to tell you something. I've served this family for 40 years. Your father, now you. I've seen bosses come and go, seen empires rise and fall. And I've learned that the ones who survive aren't the strongest or the smartest. They're the ones who know when to fight and when to fold." "Which is this?" "That's not my decision to make, but whichever you choose, commit fully. Half measures get everyone killed." The capos began arriving. One by one, they filled the chairs. Small talk, careful politeness, everyone sizing each other up. By 7:50, 11 seats were full. Only Anthony's chair remained empty. At precisely 8 p.m., Anthony walked in. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than some of these men made in a month. His confidence filled the room like cologne. "Brothers," Anthony's smile was warm, genuine-looking. "Apologies for the delay, traffic." He sat down. The meeting could begin. Frank Castellano stood. "Gentlemen, we're here to address concerns about the direction of the family. There have been questions about leadership, about strategy, about the future. This is a forum to air those concerns openly and honestly." Vincent Costa spoke first. "I have a concern about unauthorized operations, activities happening outside the official structure." All eyes turned to Anthony. "I assume you're referring to my consulting work." Anthony leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. "I've been helping certain organizations modernize their approaches, bringing this family into the 21st century. Nothing unauthorized about innovation." "Innovation requires approval from leadership." Michael kept his voice level. "You've been building a parallel organization, taking family resources and using them for personal profit. I've been taking initiative while you've been freezing all growth. Someone has to ensure we don't become irrelevant." Anthony's smile never wavered. "Tell me, brother, what have you accomplished in 6 months, besides making peace with our enemies and showing weakness at every turn?" Murmurs around the table. Michael felt the room's temperature shift. "I've kept everyone out of prison. I've maintained relationships through legitimate channels. I've started the process of transitioning our operations to legal business. That's not weakness, that's survival." "It's cowardice." Anthony stood up. "Our father built this family on strength, on respect earned through power. You're dismantling everything because you're afraid of competition, afraid of what it really takes to lead." "Sit down, Anthony." "Or what? You'll remove me? With what support?" Anthony gestured around the table. "Half this room thinks you're a pretender. The other half is waiting to see if you have the backbone to actually lead. So far, you've shown nothing but hesitation and nostalgia for a civilian life you abandoned." Michael felt the carefully constructed control slipping. "I didn't abandon anything. I built something legitimate, something that didn't require looking over my shoulder or worrying about federal indictments." "Then go back to it." Anthony's voice dropped, became intimate, dangerous. Nobody's forcing you to be here. You could leave tonight, go back to Pittsburgh, build your houses, live your quiet life. Let someone who actually wants this position take it. Our father asked me to take it. Our father was dying and desperate. He was afraid of what I'd become. But Michael, here's the truth he never understood. I'm exactly what this family needs. Someone willing to make hard choices. Someone who won't hesitate when strength is required. The room was silent, everyone watching the two brothers face each other across the table. This isn't about strength. Michael stood up too. This is about you wanting power without responsibility. You want the position so you can expand into things our father would never touch. The kind of business that gets federal task forces assigned permanently. Profitable business. Business that will keep this family relevant for another generation. Business that will get everyone in this room arrested or killed within 5 years. Anthony laughed. You're so certain, so self-righteous. Tell me something, Michael. When you made your deal with Alina Russo, did you consult anyone? Did you get approval? Or did you make a unilateral decision that affects every person in this room? The trap sprang. Michael saw it too late. I made a strategic alliance to prevent unnecessary conflict. You made a deal with the woman whose husband our father had eliminated. You negotiated with our enemies without oversight. And you call that leadership? Anthony looked around the table. Gentlemen, my brother preaches about rules and structure, but he breaks them whenever convenient. He demands loyalty while showing none. He inherited a position he never earned and expects us to follow him into irrelevance. Frank Castellano intervened. This is getting us nowhere. Perhaps we should vote, see where the council stands. No, Anthony's voice cut sharp. No vote, not yet, because I want my brother to hear something first. He pulled out his phone, opened the photo gallery, turned it toward the room. The first image showed Michael and a woman in an FBI jacket, standing in a parking garage, deep in conversation. The second image showed the woman handing Michael a business card. The third showed them from a different angle, clearly showing the FBI credentials on her belt. My brother, everyone. Anthony's voice was triumphant. The man who preaches loyalty while meeting with Special Agent Rachel Chen, FBI Organized Crime Division, in a parking garage, accepting her contact information. The room exploded into noise. Accusations, anger, shock. Michael stood frozen, watching his authority evaporate in real time. Anthony continued, relentless. I had someone watching you, Michael. Thought you might do something desperate. And look, I was right. You're so concerned about legitimacy that you're talking to federal agents. Planning what? To destroy us all to save yourself. That's not what that was. Michael's voice was drowned out by the chaos. Frank Castellano banged on the table. Order! Everyone calm down. The noise subsided, all eyes on Michael. Explain. Frank's face was stone. Explain why you're talking to FBI agents. Michael looked around the table, saw betrayal, anger, fear, saw his support crumbling like sand. The FBI approached me. I listened. I haven't agreed to anything. I was gathering information, understanding our vulnerabilities. You were negotiating our destruction. Anthony was relentless. Planning to turn state's evidence. Planning to send everyone in this room to prison to save yourself and your son. That's not true. Then why did you take the meeting? Why did you accept her card? Why didn't you tell her to go to hell and walk away? Michael had no answer that wouldn't make things worse. The truth was complicated. The truth was that he had been tempted, had been considering it, had been looking for any way out of this trap. But the truth would destroy him. Vincent Costa stood up. I can't support a boss who's talking to the feds. I'm sorry, Michael, I wanted to believe in you. but this is too much. One by one, the other capos who'd been supporting him withdrew. Not dramatically, just quietly shifting allegiance. By the time the dust settled, Michael was alone on his side of the table. 11 votes for Anthony, 1 for Michael, his own. Frank Castellano looked older than his 68 years. Michael, the council has spoken. By tradition, you can step down voluntarily or we can remove you by force. Which do you choose? Michael looked at his brother, saw victory in Anthony's eyes, saw the future he'd feared unfolding in real time. I choose to leave, but I'm taking my businesses. The legitimate operations my father built, they're mine. You can have the rest. Generous, Anthony's voice dripped false warmth. I accept. You have 24 hours to transfer everything over. After that, if you're still in Philadelphia, we'll have a problem. Michael walked toward the door, stopped, turned back. You're making a mistake, Anthony. This path you're on, it ends badly. Dad knew that. That's why he asked me to take over. Dad was wrong about a lot of things, but mostly about you. Anthony sat down in the chair at the head of the table, Michael's chair. Goodbye, brother, don't come back. Michael left the penthouse, took the elevator down 40 floors in silence, stepped out onto the Philadelphia streets at 9:30 p.m. The city moved around him, indifferent to the fact that he'd just lost everything his father had built. His phone rang. Rachel Chen. Mr. Torrino, I've been monitoring police communications. There's been an incident at your son's apartment in Boston. Gunfire reported. Boston PD is on scene. The world stopped. Is he alive? Unknown at this time. I'm sending you the address. Get there as fast as you can. And Mr. Torrino, that 72-hour deadline I gave you, it just became 24 hours. Whatever you were planning to do it now. Because Anthony just declared war on everyone you love. Michael was already running. The rest was a blur. Calling David's phone, no answer. Calling the Boston PD, being told they couldn't release information. Booking the fastest flight, an hour wait. Every second an eternity. On the plane, cramped in economy because first class was full, Michael stared out at darkness and city lights below. He thought about the moment he'd said yes to Giovanni. The moment he'd chosen duty over wisdom. The moment he'd believed he could control this situation. He'd been wrong about everything. And now, his son might be dead because of it. The plane couldn't fly fast enough. Michael closed his eyes and prayed to a God he wasn't sure he believed in anymore. Prayed that David was alive. Prayed that he'd get one more chance to make this right. Prayed that the inheritance he'd accepted hadn't cost him the only thing that mattered. Outside, the night was absolute. Inside, Michael Torrino learned what true powerlessness felt like. Not the loss of position or authority or respect. The knowledge that everything you'd done to protect someone had actually put them in more danger. The terrible understanding that love wasn't enough, that good intentions paved roads to graveyards. That sometimes, the only way to save someone was to destroy yourself completely. The plane descended into Boston. Michael's phone showed 3 missed calls from David's number. He listened to the voicemails. First message, background noise, confusion, David's voice. Dad, there were men at my apartment. They said they were friends of Uncle Anthony. I didn't let them in. I called the police. Second message, gunshots, clear and unmistakable, David breathing hard. Dad, they're shooting. Oh God, I'm in the bathroom. I don't know what to do. Third message, silence. Then David's voice, quiet. I love you, Dad. I know you tried. I know you did your best. It's okay. It's going to be okay. Then nothing. Michael deplaned into a nightmare. Rushed to the address Rachel Chen had sent. Yellow police tape. Flashing lights, detectives taking statements. His heart hammered against his ribs. A uniformed officer stopped him. "Sir, this is a crime scene." "My son lives here, David Torrino. Is he alive?" The officer's expression gave nothing away. "Let me get the detective." A woman appeared, plainclothes, late 40s, exhausted. "Mr. Torrino, I'm Detective Williams. Your son is alive. He's at Mass General. Gunshot wound to the shoulder. He'll survive." Michael's knees almost gave out. "Can I see him?" "In a few hours. He's in surgery, but he's going to be fine." She paused. "Mr. Torrino, your son said the shooters specifically asked for him by name, said they had a message from family. This wasn't random. You know anything about that?" Michael looked at the detective, at the crime scene, at the evidence of his failure scattered across yellow tape. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I know everything about that." "Then I need you to come with me. We need to talk." Michael followed her to an unmarked car, sat in the back seat like a criminal, which he supposed he was. The detective drove in silence, not to the police station, to a different building, Federal. They went inside, up an elevator, into a conference room where Rachel Chen was waiting. "Mr. Torrino," she gestured to a chair. "Sit down. We need to have a very serious conversation about what happens next." Michael sat. He was done running, done trying to play both sides, done believing he could navigate this without casualties. "Tell me what you need." Rachel Chen pulled out a file, thick with evidence, photographs, financial records, everything they had on Anthony, everything they needed Michael to confirm. "I need you to testify against your brother, against the organization, against everyone involved in tonight's attack and everything that came before. And in exchange, full immunity, witness protection for you and David, new identities, fresh start anywhere in the country, and we make sure Anthony spends the rest of his life in federal prison." Michael looked at the file, looked at the evidence of everything his family had become, looked at the choice that wasn't really a choice at all. "Where do I sign?" Outside the federal building, Philadelphia continued its indifferent existence. People lived and died and fell in love and paid their taxes. The machinery of civilization ground forward. But in that conference room, Michael Torrino signed away 40 years of family history, signed away his father's legacy, signed away any chance of redemption or reconciliation or return. Signed away everything except the one thing that mattered: his son's life. The documents felt like they weighed nothing and everything simultaneously. Each signature a betrayal, each initial a knife in the back of everyone who'd ever trusted the Torrino name. Rachel Chen witnessed each page, professional, efficient. This was just another case to her, another criminal turned informant, another domino falling in a long chain. But to Michael, it was the end of the world. Or maybe the beginning of a new one. He wouldn't know which until much later. For now, he just signed, and prayed his son would forgive him. And tried not to think about what his father would say if he could see this moment. Tried not to imagine Giovanni's voice from beyond the grave. "I asked you to take care of the family." "I did, Dad, just not the one you meant." This content is entirely fictional and does not promote, glorify, or romanticize organized crime. It depicts the real consequences and price of illegal activity. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and regret. David lay in the bed, shoulder bandaged, IV dripping clear fluid into his arm. His eyes were closed, but Michael knew he wasn't sleeping. The monitors beeped steady rhythm. Heart rate normal, blood pressure stable. Everything medical said he would survive. But survival and living were different things. Michael sat in the visitor's chair, the same kind of vinyl seat he'd occupied in his father's hospital room 6 months ago. The symmetry wasn't lost on him. Everything in this life seemed to circle back. The sins of fathers visited upon sons, the debts inherited across generations. David's eyes opened. They found Michael immediately. "You're still here." David's voice was rough from the breathing tube they'd removed an hour ago. "Where else would I be? Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, anywhere but here." David shifted slightly, winced at the pain. "The nurses said you've been here for 8 hours, sitting in that chair, not eating, not sleeping, just sitting. I needed to make sure you were okay." "I got shot, Dad. I'm very clearly not okay." David's attempt at humor fell flat. "They told me you were talking to detectives, that you gave a statement, that you're cooperating with federal investigators." Michael nodded. No point in lying anymore. "I signed papers, agreed to testify against Anthony, against the organization, against everyone." David processed this. "So you're a federal witness now, what they call a cooperating defendant." "What they call a rat." "Yeah, that too." David looked at the ceiling. "The shooters, they didn't want to kill me. One of them said so before the police came. Said Anthony wanted me scared, wanted you to know he could reach me anytime." "I know." "And now you've made a deal that guarantees he'll try again. Him or his people or whoever wants revenge for your testimony." David's laugh was bitter. "You didn't save me, Dad. You just changed who's hunting us." The truth of it cut deep. Michael had traded one threat for another. Anthony's vendetta for the wrath of everyone he was about to betray. "The FBI is offering witness protection, new identities, a fresh start somewhere far from here. I'm supposed to give up my life, my career, my name, everything I built, because you made promises to a dying criminal and can't figure out how to keep your family safe." The words landed like physical blows. Michael absorbed each one, deserved each one. "I'm trying to fix this. By destroying everything." David finally looked at him. "Do you understand what you've done? Not just to yourself or to Uncle Anthony, to me. I have to live with being the son of an informant. That follows me forever, even with a new name. People will know. People always know. Better alive and ashamed than dead and honored." "Is it?" David's question hung in the sterile air. "I'm not sure anymore." A nurse entered, checked vitals, gave David more pain medication. She left without comment, practiced at ignoring family drama. Michael waited until they were alone again. "The FBI says you'll be released tomorrow. They want to move us immediately. Safe house first, then relocation. They're working on new identities." "I'm not going." Michael's heart stopped. "David, you have to. It's not safe." "Nothing's safe, Dad. That's the point. Anthony knows where I live. The FBI knows everything about us. And somewhere between those two realities, I'm supposed to just disappear, start over, pretend the last 26 years never happened." David shook his head. "I'd rather take my chances on my own." "They'll kill you." "Maybe, or maybe I'll live long enough to build something real. Something that's actually mine, not inherited or protected or bought with blood money." David's eyes held steady. "I love you, but I can't follow you into hiding. I won't become a ghost because you couldn't say no to a dead man." The medication was taking effect. David's eyes grew heavy. Within minutes, he was sleeping. Michael sat watching his son breathe, watching the monitors confirm life, watching everything he'd tried to protect slip through his fingers like water. Rachel Chen appeared in the doorway. She'd been hovering since Michael signed the papers, protective and pragmatic in equal measure. "He said he won't go into protection." Michael didn't look away from David. "I heard we have monitoring in here for security." Of course you do. Rachel entered, stood at the foot of the bed. We can't force him, he's an adult, but we can provide security, guards, surveillance. Make it harder for Anthony to reach him. Harder isn't impossible. Nothing's impossible, Mr. Torrino, but we'll do our best. She paused. The grand jury convenes in 3 days. We need you to review your testimony. Make sure everything's accurate. The case against Anthony is strong, but your first-hand knowledge makes it airtight. What about the others, the capos, Frank Castellana? We're building cases against everyone connected to illegal operations. Some will take deals, some will fight. Frank Castellano is already getting legal representation. He knows what's coming. Michael thought about Frank, 40 years of service to the family. A man who'd been loyal to the position, not the person. Now facing federal indictment because Michael had decided to save himself and his son. How many lives am I destroying? You're not destroying them. They destroyed themselves when they chose this life. You're just providing evidence of what they've already done. Rachel's tone was clinical. Don't mistake testimony for betrayal. You're telling the truth, that's all. In this world, truth is betrayal. Then maybe it's a world that needed to end. Rachel left. Michael sat alone with his sleeping son and the weight of choices made and consequences approaching. Outside, Boston moved through its evening. People going home from work. Students heading to bars. Normal lives proceeding normally. He pulled out his phone. One missed call. Elena Russo. She'd left a voicemail. He listened. Michael, I heard what happened to David. I heard what you did. Signing with the FBI. I want you to know I don't blame you. I understand protecting your son. But this creates complications for me. If you testify about the Torrino family, you'll have to testify about our truce, about our meetings, about my operations. I can't let that happen. So I'm giving you this one warning. If my name comes up in your testimony, if you bring me into this, I'll have no choice but to protect myself. Think carefully about what you say to that grand jury. Some bridges, once burned, take everyone with them. The message ended. Michael deleted it. Another threat. Another complication. The price of cooperation kept climbing. His phone rang. Unknown number, he answered. Michael, Anthony's voice. Smooth, conversational. I heard about your deal with the feds. Disappointing, but not surprising. You always were weak when it came to David. If you hurt him again, I'll make sure you never see daylight. Relax, I made my point. David's shooting was a message, not an execution. But Michael, here's the thing. You signed those papers thinking you're trading testimony for safety. But safety's an illusion. The FBI can't protect you forever, and I'm a patient man. The grand jury convenes in 3 days. You'll be indicted within a week. You're going to spend the rest of your life in federal prison. Maybe something happens before then. Witnesses change their minds. Evidence disappears. People have accidents. Anthony's tone remained pleasant. I'm not threatening you, just observing that the world is unpredictable. Anything could happen in 3 days. I'm not changing my mind. We'll see. Give David my regards. Tell him I hope he recovers fully. Family is important after all. The line went dead. Michael sat holding the phone, feeling the walls close in. Anthony was right about one thing. 3 days was a long time, long enough for a lot to go wrong. He needed to talk to someone he trusted. Someone outside the FBI, outside the family. Someone who might understand. He dialed Father Patrick McHugh, the priest who'd officiated at Giovanni's funeral. The man who'd known the family for 40 years, but somehow stayed separate from the darkness. Father Patrick answered on the 3rd ring. Michael, I've been expecting your call. How did you know I'd call? Because men in crisis always do. And you're in quite a crisis, aren't you? I heard about David. about your agreement with the authorities, about Anthony's response. Everyone's heard everything. There are no secrets in this city. Philadelphia's a small town pretending to be a big city. Come see me. St. Augustine's, I'll be here. Michael left the hospital after confirming David's security detail was in place. 2 federal agents outside his room. Cameras monitoring. As safe as possible under the circumstances. The church was quiet. Evening mass had ended. A few candles flickered near the altar. Father Patrick sat in the front pew, reading from a worn Bible. He looked up when Michael entered. "Sit," the priest gestured to the pew beside him. "Tell me what's weighing on you." Michael sat. The church's silence was different from the hospital's. Here, the quiet felt intentional, sacred, a space carved out of the world's noise. "I don't know if I believe in confession anymore, Father, or redemption, or any of it." "That's honest. God appreciates honesty more than false piety." Father Patrick closed his Bible. "What do you believe in?" "I believe I've destroyed everything my father built. I believe I've put my son in danger trying to protect him. I believe that no matter what choice I make, someone gets hurt." "That's called being human, Michael. We all face impossible choices. The question is what we do with the consequences." "I'm testifying against my brother, against people who trusted me, against everything I was raised to honor." "Were you raised to honor criminals, or were you raised to honor family? Because those aren't the same thing." Father Patrick's eyes were kind but penetrating. "Your father was a complicated man. He did terrible things, but he also loved you. Both can be true." "He asked me to take care of the family. I promised." "And you did, just not the way he expected. You're taking care of David. That's family too. Maybe the only family that really matters." Michael stared at the altar, at the crucifix hanging above it, at the image of sacrifice and suffering. "How do I live with what I'm about to do?" "The same way everyone lives with hard choices, one day at a time, accepting that perfection is impossible and grace is available anyway." Father Patrick stood up. "Michael, your father made his choices. Anthony is making his. You can only make yours, and from where I'm sitting, you're choosing love over loyalty to criminals. That's not betrayal, that's wisdom." "It doesn't feel like wisdom." "It rarely does in the moment. Wisdom usually feels like failure until years later when you look back and realize it was the only path forward." They sat in silence. Michael let the church's peace wash over him. It didn't erase the guilt or fear, but it created space around those feelings, made them bearable. "Will you pray for me, Father?" "I already have been. Since the day you accepted your father's position, I knew it would end here, or somewhere like here." Father Patrick placed a hand on Michael's shoulder. "God doesn't judge us by our father's sins. He judges us by what we do with the inheritance we receive. You're trying to break a cycle. That's holy work, even when it's ugly." Michael left the church feeling no better, but somehow more grounded. The path ahead was still dark, but at least he knew he wasn't walking it entirely alone. The safe house was in suburban Maryland, a nondescript townhouse that could belong to anyone. Rachel Chen drove Michael there after he insisted on one more night at the hospital with David. The FBI had agreed reluctantly. Security was tight, but they'd allowed it. Now, 2 days before the grand jury, Michael sat in government housing eating government food and preparing to burn down his family's empire. Rachel brought him files, decades of evidence, photographs, financial records, everything they needed to bury Anthony and everyone connected to him. "You'll testify for approximately 4 hours." Rachel walked him through the process. "The prosecutors will ask questions. You'll answer truthfully. The grand jury will listen and decide whether there's enough evidence to indict. Given what we have, indictment is guaranteed." And then, Trial months from now. You'll testify again, this time in open court. Defense attorneys will cross-examine, try to destroy your credibility, attack your character, make you look like the real criminal. I am a criminal. Were past tense. You haven't committed any crimes since taking the immunity deal. You're a witness now. Remember that distinction. It matters. Michael reviewed the files, recognized names, faces, operations, his father's signature on documents, Anthony's, his own from 25 years ago before he walked away. What happens to Frank Castellano? Rachel consulted her notes. He'll likely take a deal, reduced sentence in exchange for testimony corroborating yours. He's 68, doesn't want to die in prison. Most of them will flip once the indictments come down. He served my father for 40 years. Loyalty has limits, usually about where a 20-year prison sentence begins. Rachel's cynicism was earned. Don't romanticize these people, Michael. They'd testify against you if positions were reversed. She was right. Michael knew she was right, but it didn't make the betrayal feel less real. That night, he called David. The phone rang 6 times before his son answered. Hey, David's voice was stronger, the medication wearing off, the pain manageable. How are you feeling? Like I got shot by people who wanted to send my father a message. So pretty terrible, thanks for asking. A pause. They're releasing me tomorrow. I'm going to stay with a friend in Cambridge, somewhere Anthony doesn't know about. The FBI can protect you better. The FBI can monitor me better. There's a difference. I need space, Dad. From you, from them, from all of this. I understand. Michael didn't, but saying so wouldn't help. I testify the day after tomorrow. Once I do, there's no going back. There's already no going back. You signed the papers. Anthony shot me. The bridges are burned. All that's left is surviving the fallout. David, I need you to know something. Everything I've done, every choice, it's been to keep you safe, even when those choices made things worse. Silence on the line. Then David's voice, quieter. I know, and that's the tragedy, isn't it? You love me enough to destroy everything, but you can't love me enough to just walk away from it all. There's always one more responsibility, one more obligation, one more promise to a dead man. If I walk away, Anthony wins. And if Anthony wins, his version of the family becomes the future. Violence. Things that make what Dad did look tame. Maybe, or maybe that's the excuse you tell yourself because you can't admit you chose this. Somewhere deep down, you wanted the position, wanted the power, wanted to prove you could do it better than Anthony. And now we're all paying the price for your pride. The words cut because they held truth. Michael had told himself he accepted the position out of duty. But David was right. Some part of him had wanted it, had wanted to prove he was worthy, had wanted to succeed where his father had failed. I'm sorry, David, for all of it. I know you are, but sorry doesn't unshoot me. Sorry doesn't give me back a normal life. Sorry is just what people say when they can't fix what they broke. David hung up. Michael sat in the safe house holding a dead phone, listening to silence that felt permanent. Rachel found him an hour later, staring at nothing. You okay? My son hates me. My brother wants me dead. I'm about to destroy the only legacy my father left. So no, I'm not okay, but I'm still breathing. That's something. For what it's worth, you're doing the right thing. The right thing feels a lot like the worst thing. Usually does. Rachel sat down across from him. Can I tell you something, off the record? Does off the record exist anymore? For this, yes, she leaned forward. My brother, David Martinez, the one who died in Fallujah, he joined the Marines to get away from our family. We weren't criminals, but we were broken, alcoholic father, enabling mother, dysfunction that repeated every generation. David thought the military would save him, and it did for a while, gave him structure, purpose, brothers who had his back. Until it got him killed. Until he died serving something bigger than our family's damage. And you know what? I was angry at him for years. Angry he left. Angry he died. Angry he escaped and I didn't. Rachel's eyes were distant. But eventually I realized he did the right thing. He broke the cycle. And yeah, it cost him his life, but it saved mine. Because watching him have the courage to leave gave me the courage to build something different. What does this have to do with me? You're breaking the cycle, Michael. Your son is furious now. But someday, maybe years from now, he'll realize you did what your father couldn't. You chose him over the organization. You chose truth over loyalty to criminals. That matters. Does it matter if he never speaks to me again? I don't know, but it has to matter more than letting Anthony turn the family into something worse. Sometimes the only way to save what you love is to destroy what's killing it. The next day crawled by. Michael reviewed testimony, memorized details, prepared for questions the prosecutors would ask. The routine was numbing, which was probably the point. Keep him busy, keep him focused. Don't let him think too hard about what he was about to do. That evening, Frank Castellano called. The FBI allowed it, monitored the conversation. Michael, Frank's voice was tired. I'm taking a deal, 5 years, testimony against Anthony in exchange for reduced sentence. I wanted you to hear it from me. I don't blame you, Frank. You're doing what you need to survive. So are you, but Michael, I need you to understand something. I served your father for 40 years. I watched you grow up. I tried to guide you when you took over. And I want you to know I don't hate you for this. I understand it. That's generous. It's honest. You were put in an impossible position. Your father's deathbed manipulation, Anthony's ambition, David's safety. There was no good answer. You did what you thought was right. Frank paused. But Michael, when you testify tomorrow, remember something. The people you're testifying against, they're human. They have families, kids. Most of them got into this life the same way you did, born into it, doing what they thought they had to do. I know. I hope you do, because living with this is going to be harder than you think. And the only way you survive the guilt is by remembering that you didn't create this situation. You just refused to perpetuate it. Frank hung up. Michael sat with the weight of his words. The old consigliere was right. Tomorrow would change everything. And unlike signing papers in a federal office, testimony was public, permanent, irreversible. Rachel appeared in the doorway. It's time. We need to move you to a hotel near the courthouse. Security protocol. Michael gathered his things. Not much. A change of clothes, toiletries, the photo of Jennifer and David he'd carried since the hospital. Everything else was already gone, left behind in Pittsburgh, in Philadelphia, in the wreckage of 2 lives he'd tried to live simultaneously. The hotel was nice, not luxury, but comfortable. A room on the 8th floor with a view of Baltimore's Inner Harbor. Rachel had explained they'd moved the grand jury proceedings here for security. Too many threats in Philadelphia, too much Anthony influence. Michael stood at the window watching water reflect city lights. Somewhere out there, Anthony was planning, scheming, looking for any angle to prevent tomorrow's testimony. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. Michael, Elena Russo's voice. Last chance. Don't mention me in your testimony. Keep our arrangement private. I'll make it worth your while. How? I'll provide evidence against Anthony that even the FBI doesn't have. Video of him planning operations. Financial records of his offshore accounts. Things that guarantee his conviction without you having to discuss our truce. You stay quiet about me, I help bury your brother. Everyone wins. Michael thought about it, considered the offer. Elena was extending a lifeline, a way to testify without dragging her down. Send me the evidence. If it's real, I'll keep you out of it. You have my word, Michael, and unlike your family, I keep my promises. She hung up. 20 minutes later, an encrypted email arrived. Michael opened it on the FBI laptop they'd provided. Video files, financial documents, emails, everything Alina had promised and more. He called Rachel, showed her the evidence. Where did this come from? Alina Russo, in exchange for leaving her name out of my testimony. Rachel studied the files. Her expression shifted from skepticism to astonishment. This is enough to convict Anthony 10 times over. Money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy, all documented. So I can keep my deal with her. The prosecutors won't like it. They'll want to know your sources. Tell them an anonymous tip. Tell them whatever keeps Alina out of it. She's trying to go legitimate. Same as me. We're both just trying to survive. Rachel considered this. I'll talk to them, no promises. But Michael, if this evidence is authentic, it changes everything. Anthony won't be able to defend against this. He's done. That night, Michael barely slept. Tomorrow would end his brother's freedom, would shatter what remained of the family, would cement his role as the man who destroyed 40 years of Torrino legacy. But it would also save David, would stop Anthony from hurting anyone else, would close a chapter that should have ended generations ago. At 6 a.m., Rachel knocked on his door. It's time. The courthouse was fortress-like, metal detectors, armed guards, agents everywhere. They moved Michael through back corridors, avoiding public spaces, into an elevator, up to the grand jury floor. The room was smaller than he expected. 23 citizens sitting in rows, prosecutors at a table, a court reporter, the judge presiding. Michael was sworn in, raised his right hand, promised to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. He sat down, faced the grand jury, ordinary people who would decide his brother's fate based on words spoken in this room. The prosecutor began. Please state your name for the record. Michael Thomas Torrino. And your relationship to Anthony Torrino. He's my brother. Can you describe the nature of the Torrino family organization? Michael took a breath. This was it, the moment of no return. The Torrino family has operated in Philadelphia for 40 years. My father, Giovanni Torrino, built an organization that combined legitimate business with illegal operations. Construction contracts obtained through bribery, union control through intimidation, money laundering through real estate. My brother Anthony inherited operational control and expanded into worse territories. 4 hours. Michael testified for 4 hours, described operations, named names, provided details that only an insider could know. The prosecutors asked questions. He answered. The grand jury listened. He told them about the warehouse incident, about Anthony's parallel organization, about the threats against David, about everything except Alina Russo. That part he kept private, a promise kept in a world of broken promises. When it ended, the judge thanked him. The grand jury would deliberate. Indictments would follow within days. Michael left the courthouse through the same back corridors, into a waiting car, back to the safe house. The deed was done. Rachel drove in silence. Finally, as they crossed into Maryland, she spoke. You did well. The grand jury will indict. Anthony's going down. It doesn't feel like victory. Because it's not. It's just the least terrible option. They reached the safe house. Michael went inside, sat on government furniture, waited for what came next. The indictments came 3 days later. Anthony Torrino charged with racketeering, conspiracy, money laundering, attempted murder. 8 other capos charged. Arrest warrants issued. The FBI moved at dawn, coordinated raids across Philadelphia. Anthony was taken into custody at his club. No resistance, no drama, just handcuffs and a perp walk for the cameras. Michael watched the news coverage, saw his brother's face, saw the end of everything their father had built. His phone rang. David. I saw the news. They arrested Uncle Anthony. Yeah. How do you feel? Empty, relieved, guilty, all of it at once. Silence. Then David spoke, his voice different, softer. I've been thinking about what you said about breaking cycles, and I realized something. You're right. If Anthony had taken over, it would have gotten worse. And if I have kids someday, they'd be born into that. The cycle would continue. David, I'm not saying I forgive you, or that I understand everything you did, but I'm saying I see why you did it, and that's something. Michael felt tears he'd been holding for months. That's more than I deserve. Probably, but you're still my dad, and I guess that means something too. They talked for an hour, not about the organization or testimony or what came next, about normal things, David's recovery, his work, architecture projects he was designing, life continuing despite everything. When they hung up, Michael felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope, fragile and uncertain, but real. The trial took 8 months to prepare. Anthony refused every plea deal, insisted on his day in court, believed he could beat the charges. He was wrong. The jury convicted on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 25 years federal prison. No parole. Anthony would be 73 when he got out, if he lived that long. Michael didn't attend the sentencing, couldn't face his brother one last time, but he heard about it. Anthony had looked at the prosecutors, at the judge, at everyone except the empty seat where Michael should have been. His last words before they took him away. Tell my brother I hope he lives long enough to regret this. 2 years after the trial, Michael lived in a small town in Oregon. Population 8,000. No one knew his past. He worked at a hardware store, helped customers pick paint colors, lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. David visited once, awkward at first, but they walked along the river, talked, found pieces of their relationship in the rubble. I'm getting married. David showed him a photo on his phone. A woman named Sarah, architect like him, kind face. She's beautiful. She knows about everything, about you, about the family. I told her before I proposed. Figured if we're going to build something real, it can't be built on lies. Smart. I learned from watching what lies cost you and Mom. David pocketed his phone. I'm not inviting you to the wedding, I'm sorry. But Sarah's family, they can't know. It's too complicated. I understand. But I wanted to tell you. Wanted you to know I'm building something good, something clean. The cycle ends with me. That's all I ever wanted. David left the next morning, hugged Michael before getting in his car. A brief embrace, but genuine. Michael stood in his apartment after David drove away, looked at the sparse furniture, the life he'd built from nothing. It wasn't much, but it was honest. His phone had a single photograph saved. Jennifer and David at the beach. David must have been 10, before everything got complicated, before cancer and death and impossible promises. Michael looked at Jennifer's face in the photo, wondered what she'd think of how it all turned out, whether she'd be proud or disappointed or both. He decided on both. Everything in life was both. That evening, he walked to the small Catholic church 2 blocks from his apartment. Father Patrick had retired, moved to Florida, but Michael still went to church sometimes, sat in the back, listened to homilies that didn't judge him. After the service, he lit a candle for Giovanni, For Anthony. For everyone destroyed by the family business. For second chances and broken cycles and the price of doing the right thing. The candle flame flickered, but held steady. Michael walked back to his apartment as the Oregon sun set behind mountains. A small town. A simple life. No power. No empire. No legacy except the one he'd tried to prevent. His phone showed a text from an unknown number. He almost deleted it, but something made him open it. Michael, it's Frank. I'm out. Served my 5 years. Wanted you to know I don't blame you. You did what you had to do. I'm living in Arizona now. Quiet life. We both got out alive. That's more than most can say. Take care of yourself. Take care of David. The Torrino name died with Anthony's sentence, but the people who carried it were still here, still breathing, still trying to make the rest of our lives mean something. That's enough. That has to be enough. Michael read the message twice, then typed a response. Thanks, Frank. You're right. It's enough. It has to be. He hit send, deleted the conversation, made coffee, sat by the window watching his quiet street where nothing important ever happened. And for the first time in 52 years, Michael Torrino felt something close to peace. Not happiness, peace. The burden of inheritance had been lifted, the weight of family legacy set down, the cycle broken, even if the breaking had cost everything. He'd kept his promise to Giovanni, just not the way his father intended. He'd taken care of the family that mattered. David was alive, building something good. The Torrino name would die with Michael, and that was the greatest gift he could give his son. Freedom from the past. Freedom from the curse of inheritance. Freedom to be just a man, not a boss, not a legacy, not a burden. Just David Torrino, architect, soon-to-be husband, living a normal life. That was worth 25 years in prison for Anthony, worth federal witness protection, worth every friendship betrayed and every bridge burned. That was worth it all. Michael finished his coffee, turned off the lights, lay in bed listening to Oregon silence, and slept without nightmares for the first time in 2 years. 3 years after the trial, on a Tuesday morning in April, Michael walked to his mailbox and found an envelope with no return address. The postmark said Boston. He opened it carefully. Inside was a birth announcement. Cream-colored cardstock, elegant script. David and Sarah Torrino were pleased to announce the birth of Jennifer Marie Torrino. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Born April 10th at Massachusetts General Hospital. Mother and daughter doing well. No invitation to visit. No phone number. No personal note. Just the announcement. Proof that life continued. That the next generation had arrived. Named after her grandmother. Michael stood in his small Oregon apartment, holding the card with hands that trembled slightly. He read it 3 times, studied every word, every detail. Jennifer Marie. His granddaughter. A child born free of the burden he'd carried. Free of the Torrino legacy. Free of the debts and violence and impossible choices that had defined 3 generations. She would never know her great-grandfather Giovanni, would never meet Uncle Anthony, would grow up with parents who chose honesty over inheritance, who built their lives on truth instead of lies. She would be free. And that freedom had cost Michael everything. His family, his name, his relationship with his son, years of isolation in a town where no one knew who he'd been. But looking at that announcement, at the evidence of a cycle finally broken, he knew. It was worth it. Every sacrifice, every betrayal, every lonely night in Oregon wondering if he'd made the right choice. Worth it. Michael walked to his refrigerator, opened the door. The inside was mostly empty, bachelor existence, frozen dinners, coffee, beer. He pinned the birth announcement to the freezer door with a magnet, the only decoration in his sparse apartment. A reminder. Not of what he'd lost, but of what he'd saved. He made coffee, sat by the window, watched the Oregon morning unfold. People walking dogs, kids heading to school, normal life proceeding normally. Somewhere in Boston, his son was holding a daughter, teaching her to laugh, promising to protect her, building a life that had nothing to do with Philadelphia or power or blood debts. And Michael, alone in Oregon, finally understood what his father had been trying to say in that hospital room. Take care of the family. He had. Just not the one Giovanni meant. The inheritor's burden had been lifted. The price had been paid. The cycle was broken. And in a small town where nobody knew his name or his past or the weight he'd carried, Michael Torrino discovered what his father never had. That true power wasn't controlling others. It was controlling yourself. That real legacy wasn't what you built. It was what you prevented from being built. That the greatest act of love wasn't protection. It was liberation. His phone buzzed, text from David's number, the first direct communication in over a year. Her middle name is for Mom. Her first name is Jennifer because that's who she reminds me of. Strong, stubborn, unwilling to accept the world as it is. I thought you should know. Michael stared at the message, typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on the truth. Thank you for telling me. She's lucky to have you. 3 dots appeared. David was typing, then stopped, then started again. Finally, maybe someday she'll meet her grandfather when she's old enough to understand, when I'm ready, but not yet. I'll wait, Michael typed back, however long it takes. I know you will. That's the problem and the solution, isn't it? The conversation ended there, but it was more than Michael had hoped for, more than he deserved. He looked at the birth announcement on his refrigerator, at the evidence that somewhere a baby girl existed who would never know the weight of inherited sin, who would grow up normal, free. And Michael smiled. Not the bitter smile of regret, not the forced smile of pretense. A real smile. The first genuine smile in 3 years. Because Jennifer Marie Torrino, all 7 pounds and 3 ounces of her, represented something more powerful than any empire Giovanni had built. She represented hope. She represented the future. She represented proof that sometimes the only way to save your family is to burn down everything your family was built on. Michael finished his coffee, got ready for work, walked to the hardware store where he'd spend another day helping strangers pick paint colors and light bulbs. A simple life, an honest life. And now, a life with purpose renewed. Because somewhere in Boston, his granddaughter was learning to exist in a world that didn't know the Torrino name. And that anonymity, that blessed, beautiful anonymity, was the greatest gift he could ever give her. The burden of inheritance finally lifted. Not just for him. For her. Forever. This wasn't easy to tell. Michael faced the choice most fathers dread: save your son or honor your father's legacy. No Hollywood ending, just brutal truth about breaking generational curses. I want to hear from you. Standing in that hospital room, your father dying, your brother waiting to destroy everything. What would you have done? Said yes to the deathbed promise, or walked away? Drop your thoughts below. If this story hit you, that mix of respect for sacrifice and heartbreak for the cost, subscribe for more complex moral tales. Real men, impossible choices, no sugarcoating. What's your take?